What are the ancient stories of a moonless sky? Where are they from?
Ancient Indian texts will have it, but also native legends will have it about the moon,
Really?
about a moonless sky, and then the moon arrives, and
When did they think the moon arrived?
it's hard to tell. I always go to younger dries, but who really knows? The Earth was apparently just covered in this haze, just very wet, very hazy, maybe like Venus or something like that. Then the moon arrives, and all that water from the atmosphere drops down to Earth. The tidal forces are crazy. There's a huge flood, and everything just settles. And then the moon is here, and the moon is now like the guardian of the planet, which it really is. We couldn't really survive without it.
Because it stabilizes our atmosphere, right?
Stabilizes us and
Stabilizes our orbit.
our orbit and our spin and our axis.
Yeah.
Like when there's a major earthquake, the Earth changes speed. The spin like our spin, it changes like measurably if there's a big earthquake, and if there's a lot of those, that could throw you off the axis. But the moon steps in like a bouncer and it settles things back down.
So the idea would be that some sort of a superior civilization placed the moon there to ensure our survival?
I don't think they care about us.
Really?
No, I don't think so.
How come?
Again, we're in very speculative territory because nobody knows.
Right.
But I would think it would just be for resources. Hey, this place has a lot of stable water. That's
it?
useful.
Don't you think they would be fascinated with us as an emerging civilization? And like I always say, that if we found a planet that had cave people on it, like just starting to learn stone tools and stuff like that, we would for sure be interested in them. We'd be so fascinated. And we would probably try to accelerate their learning curve.
You think we would?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, well, think of what a lot of these jerk-offs have done with like uncontacted tribes and stuff like that. We're always trying to intervene and do something with them.
You know the dark forest theory?
No.
It's Lucian Shah who wrote the three-body problem and all of those.
Oh.
Dark forest theory says that if you attain a certain level of technology, the best thing you can do is just be quiet, because the universe is a dark forest, and the first person to stick his head out dies, because you don't want a competitor in your region. So as soon as a culture gets close to some technology that they're on a path to threaten you, you got to take them out. You got to halt their technology. And three-body problem is kind of based on that. That's what they do in the books, and that seems to make a little more sense to me than sort of this altruistic, hey, let's help them, the Star Trek approach. Let's make first contact and all of that. I like, human nature is a tricky thing. We're very selfish. You and I might want to see those people and help them along, but there's a lot of people that would not want a competitor in the neighborhood.
Well, yeah, maybe. But what if they don't even think of us as a competitor? What if they're so advanced? Like if they're millions of years advanced, wouldn't they like this is the thing that Diana Pasulka and Gary Nolan and a lot of these people that study crashed retrievals, there's a term that they use that these are donations.
Right.
That these vehicles are donations, and that the idea is we're supposed to look at this and formulate new ideas through reverse engineering.
And there's circumstantial evidence that that's true. If you look at Bell Labs and all the crazy discoveries after Roswell, like we're using cathode ray tubes and suddenly transistors are made and silicon semiconductors and wireless transmission. And Bell Labs is all these leaps forward.
Fiber optics,
laser technology came out of Bell as well. And, the retrieval experts say that fiber optics and lasers for sure is reverse engineered. And it kind of makes a lot of sense because it seemed to have come out of nowhere. Suddenly Bell Labs has it. But it's my question is where is the stuff? We got World War II. We go into Korea in 1950, and at the time, Russia had the MiG-15 was basically on par with us. I think we had the F-86 at the time, and MiG might have even been better. So that would have been a great time for some advanced tech. But America did catch up and exceed the Soviets about 51, 52, during Korea, and then has been superior ever since. But you would think that after 47, with the Soviets there, let's get some of this anti-gravitic stuff going.
Yeah, maybe the problem is that you're working in this very compartmentalized environment, so you're not allowed to share with all these different scientists. So because of that, there's no collaboration, which is necessary for real innovation. You have to have experts from a bunch of different fields analyzing all the different aspects of it. This is what Lazar pointed to, the problems that they were having at S4 when they were trying to back engineer this stuff. He's like, you can't do science like this because everything is so top secret and so compartmentalized. The metallurgists were not allowed to talk to the propulsions people, and no one was allowed to talk to anybody else, and everybody was just like, what the fuck is going on? Like,
Right.
what are these things? Where they didn't even tell him, allegedly, if the story's true. They didn't even tell him where this thing came from. They show it to him, and there's a United States flag sticker on it. And he's like, oh, this is ours. Oh, that makes sense. And then he's examining. He's like, oh, no, it's not. Like, there's no seams in this thing. Like, what is this? What is the metal? Why is it designed for something that's 3 feet tall? Like, there's no controls inside this thing. Like, what is this reactor? How does this thing work?
There's a chair.
Yeah.
There's a couple of chairs. It looks like there's a neural interface, maybe. You hear a lot of the scientists, their frustration. Like, if I could just talk to these guys.
Right.
I'm picking up an EM field from this. The metallurgist would be helpful here to tell me
Right.
what's going on. I keep coming across spinning mercury all the time.
Spinning mercury.
The spinning mercury engine has been part of the lore since ancient India has the Vimanas, those craft. If you look at the ancient texts, it may have been in the Mahabharata.
Yeah.
But they allude to this liquid metal. And then you fast forward to like the Nazis building the Bell, the Die Glocke. That was a mercury engine. And then we fast forward a little further, Mark McCandlish and the ARV vehicle, the flux liner. That's spinning mercury engine. So spinning mercury keeps popping up. And spinning mercury would cause some type of field. What that would be, I'm not a scientist or physicist, I'm not sure, but it would certainly throw off a bunch of ions that could maybe be harnessed or used for something.
Well, it's like we're trying to explain things to us based on our current understanding of technology. Like, glass was invented a long time ago, but imagine showing up with a brand new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra with Gorilla Glass, in the thin frame, and looking at that. They were, what the fuck is this?
There'd be statues of you
Right.
for 1,000 years.
Well, you know what glass is, and you know what metal is, right? Well, this is glass and metal. You're like, what?
What?
No, what the fuck is this?
We took sand and made it real hot, and it
Yeah.
made it clear. Huh?
What? And
Right.
you can drop it on the concrete and it doesn't break.
Right.
What? Yeah. So just our current understanding of technology based on the origins of that technology, just metal and glass. You show someone metal and glass is thousands of years old. Show them what we have now with metal and glass. They'd be blown away. And you just keep going. Keep going. Go 1,000 years from now. Like, what does it all look like? It's like probably some sort of gravity propulsion system, probably 3D printed, so there are no seams.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the frustration about disclosure is how far could we be by now?
Right.
Had there been disclosure in 47 or whatever.
It's even more of a psyop if it's all bullshit. Like, it's a psyop if it actually is like, wow, the government is actually really good at one thing. They're good at keeping secrets about UFOs.
That's right.
But if they're not, if it's all bullshit, like, boy, how weird that we've been like focusing on this nonsense. Like, as a culture, it got in the front page of the New York Times in 2017. But meanwhile, it's all nonsense.
Right.
That's almost less likely.
Well, if you look at what Doty did in the 70s and 80s with Paul Benowitz, when Benowitz discovered this advanced technology on Kirtland Air Force Base, he called the base and said, hey, I think there's UFOs. So they send Doty out. He was Air Force Intelligence, OSI. They send him out to Benowitz, and he's like, Paul, I think it might be UFOs. It is aliens. And Paul gets a little bit wacky, and he starts intercepting signals from outer space, and they're sending him messages, but it turned out it's really the NSA rented a house across the street, and Paul is committed at some point. And then Doty, over the years, changes his story and says, no, a lot of it is actually true. But Doty is also, he said as recently as 2019, Hal Puthoff tried to recruit him for a disinformation campaign with ATIP.
Really? So Hal Puthoff has been a part of disinformation campaigns.
Allegedly forever.
And what have they been doing with these disinformation campaigns? What have they been trying to muddle.
Just to keep guys like you and me fascinated and trying to figure stuff out while they can just operate their advanced technology in peace. Like, let them think it's aliens and UFOs. That's fine.
What a dirty thing to do to
Filthy.
us.
In the 50s, they were very public about anti-gravity. It was in the
Yeah.
papers.
Yeah.
The G engine, they were talking about it. And then suddenly, whoosh, quiet.